We're recording in progress. So we're going to start again. I'm Lindsay Kronk. I work at the University of Rochester. I'm Assistant Dean for Scholarly Resources and Curation. And you may know me from being loud on Twitter and having a lot of opinions. Pemento came to me and actually to my colleague, Brianna Marshall, who was at the University of Northern Kentucky. We had worked together years and years ago at the very start of our careers on the Lead a Blog. And we had a really strong sort of cohort sense of community. And we were both feeling the lack of that here in mid-career as much as anything else. And some of the features that we identified were that it feels really long, right? Mid-career is this seemingly in like wild stretch of everything between like when you really feel mid-career, which, you know, we don't pinpoint it, 5 or 8 years, right? Where you started to settle in until you're starting to sunset your career. Like, what a wild idea, right? What a wilderness to be left alone in. And so we started to think about what would it look like? What could community look like for mid-career librarians? So again, many mid-career librarians at this point in time, library workers, were in jobs that actually didn't even, frickin' exist, right? A decade or 20 years ago. In previous configurations of our libraries, we have whole new areas of expertise that we're sort of expected not only to pioneer ourselves, but to bring along as cultures within our organizations. And if libraries are transforming, it's probably because of that mid-career group, right? So we're the engines for a lot, and that creates a lot of burdens, and it can create a lot of burnout. It's just something that I had observed. I got together with Ashley, with Morini, with Fleming, with a variety of volunteers, and we just said, let's take a stab at this. Let's take a stab at creating a really light scale program for us, by us, and see what we can do. The bulk of the resources that were available in the field were really about how do we make ourselves into better managers, and we were more interested in how, again, do we cultivate a community that helps all of us figure out that as much as you have professional goals, like maybe the outcome for you doesn't have anything to do with management skills, doesn't have anything to do with traditional career development. And it's been really fun to do that. So Pemento is really designed to create space and demand time from participants to explicitly reflect on and explore career motivation. Like, why did you come here? And what do you hope to accomplish next? We have found that these connections and support networks are really critical to have, particularly beyond our home institution. Morini's awesome. Having people I can talk to outside of the University of Rochester is critically important. And let's face it, even with the support and resources that we have in place, it can be really awkward to have some of those career growth conversations. And it really helps to have people, sounding boards to talk about, strategize about, and at an individual level, get to the heart of what we really, really want, Spice Girl style. So with that, if no one else has anything to add, I'm going to hand it off to Maureen. She's going to talk about blowing up professional development.
Hi, so I'm Marini Strub, Director of Performance and User Engagement at the River Campus Library. So I work with Lindsay on a day-to-day basis where we team and collaborate on many things. So when she had the idea about Pemento, it felt like a natural pairing for me, and done a lot of stuff, not only with my own development, but also interesting in developing others, right? So people within my teams and people within my organization. So because I've been through a handful of mentoring programs, either as a mentor or mentee, we kind of wanted to kind of get a sense of, we kind of looked across the landscape to see what was missing. And so more traditional mentoring programs are based really on that, establishing that one-to-one relationship between new professionals and established professionals, right? So often focus on specific professional development, like a skills development. So I think about my own self and my own mentoring / coaching relationships, where we're looking at developing facilitation skills or developing the use of a particular tool. And we wanted something that was a little bit more and a little bit different to meet the needs of mid-career librarians, that special population that Lindsay identified as driving kind of the work of organizations. So peer mentoring is a relationship between equals, unlike the hierarchical nature that you typically see in mentoring programs, who are oftentimes facing the same or similar struggles at the same time. And so the value of having a peer mentoring cohort is that it increases really the chances that you'll meet someone that you really connect with on a deep level, where one-to-one peer matching can be kind of hit or miss oftentimes. So we were saying, let's invite you into this community space. We'll pair you up with a group of people and perhaps increase your odds of finding that one person that you could connect with really. And because we recognize that mid-career mentorship was so much more than skills building, oftentimes mid-career decisions are influenced heavily by our personal conditions. At this stage of our lives, typically we are caretakers, we have responsibilities, we have geographic limitations. And so we really, again, wanted to cultivate an environment or a space where that was not bound by those typical barriers. So oftentimes mid-career professionals have traveled down a professional path and are often wondering again, is where I am where I want to be, right? So we wanted to create space to be able to have people seriously consider that question and provide support for whatever that answer is. Next slide, please. So some guiding principles around it. First of all, Pemento addresses gaps that we identified in a community of care. So the first is creating a community. And then secondly, providing scaffolding to help people get to those deeper questions. And then the third thing around the things that we found missing in a community of care is providing support for personal development. We iteratively developed the Pemento program and have had some amazing results. Cohorts in spring of 21, summer of 21, and spring of 22. And between each cohort, we reflect and grow, and we add new features and new functionality and new ways of actually existing as a community. Interest in our first cohorts was overwhelming. We had a stupidly ridiculous number of people interested in participating, validating the need for something like this. And each successive cohort, while not as wildly overwhelming, there's more demand than we actually have space to accommodate. So we say, and we like to stand by and say that Pemento has fundamentally been life-changing because it's changed lives of the people that have gone through the program.
Okay, so now it's back to me. So I'm Ashley Chase. I'm the Associate Director of the Law Library at Stetson University College of Law, so the resident law librarian for this program. And I want to talk about why I think Pemento is so important for law librarians. And Amy Pittman is here too, and she's going to talk as well as a participant in Pemento. And I know there are a couple of other spicy peppers on this call who may want to jump in as well. But, I have always felt that law librarians are a little stuffy, right? That we think very highly of ourselves, myself included, right? And that sometimes that can get in the way of our professional growth. I was really fortunate that I was given an incredible mentor through AALL and through the Leadership Academy. And she and I have a tremendous relationship. And if I am going, down a path that is no good, right? I can call her and she will talk me off a ledge, right? And she has been a part of this conference and I love her, right? And I truly cannot imagine my professional life without her. But there were some things that I've been dealing with, have dealt with in my 10 years at Stetson that no top-down mentor is prepared to talk about, right? And it's the power dynamic, right? Like sometimes when you're struggling with management, how do you talk to somebody who's a library director about the struggles that you feel with management generally? When you talk to somebody who feels that them being a law librarian is a vocation, right? How do you talk to them about the fact that vocational law is problematic? And sometimes we don't treat our patrons with respect because we are too caught up in our own nonsense, right? And I was really fortunate that I came to meet Lindsay and Fleming and Marini through some alternative channels. Lindsay wrote a chapter in a book that I edited, and we did a plenary panel together at the Charleston conference, which there are very few law librarians that go to Charleston. Oh, look, you tout in the book. It's been a few years. And after that conference, Fleming marched up to us and was like, we're going to go get hamburgers. And like, we all thought that we were friends, that each other was friends with the other one. And it was just this really natural thing. And then, God bless Lindsay, introduced Marini to us. And it has just been this really nice, like taking shape of a peer mentoring group where I can talk to them about small win stuff, big win stuff, right, stresses, and that they will talk me off the ledge, and they don't always tell me it's going to be okay. Because you know what? Sometimes it isn't going to be okay. And that's something that we need to talk about. We have, as Marini said, brought a lot of people into these cohorts, right? So our first cohort had 75 people. Our second cohort had over 100 people. We capped participation this time around at 50 people. We actually had more than 50 people who wanted to sign up. So we ended up with a wait list situation. And I have been really happy to see that the inclusion of law librarians has grown, because I think that while I learned from all of you, right, learned some things today as a part of this conference, sometimes that learning can be a little bit limited, because again, we're getting in our own way, and it's really easy to think, oh, this is just happening in law libraries, when it's not, and other libraries are dealing with the same stuff. And so it's been really interesting to sort of see the impact on law librarians, particularly in reflecting on why we do what we do, how we do what we do, how we interact with other peers. And I don't think that listen, I don't like AA particularly these days, and that is no secret. But we don't do any peer mentoring in AA. Unless you find your own people, there is no way to connect with people in this mid-career gap. And so, sort of watching the comments roll in about how effective this is as somebody who runs it has been really rewarding. And I am hoping that Amy can hop in here and talk about what Pemento has been like for her as a participant.
Yeah. Well, I'm still a relatively young law librarian, but I came to law librarianship after a law career and a career running a public library. So, my legal career, my law librarian career is not mid-career, but I'm mid-career in all other senses. So I defined myself as mid-career and joined Pemento. I was in the summer 21 cohort, and it hit for me at the exact right time. I needed to take a deep breath. We had survived the first full academic year in the COVID world. We don't know what the next year looks like. I just needed a deep breath. Where are we? And sort of getting my feet back under me. One of the things I really liked about Pemento is it gave me the space and some of the pushes I needed to think about where am I now? Where do I want to go? And what does that look like? And how do I get there? So I really enjoyed that. There were baby steps. My cohort within Pemento, because we're broken up into smaller groups, were mostly academic librarians. There was one other law librarian in there, and there were some public librarians in there. It was just good to hear the different, we were all in the same space. We were all having the same struggles. And so there was a lot of commonality, even though we weren't all doing the same things. But it was just good to have the perspectives of other people and just be able to sort of word vomit, everything that was going on back in the summer of 2021. A personal aside of the 3 goals, I just pulled out my Pemento notebook this morning, and of the 3 goals that I had written down last summer, I've achieved one of them and have made significant progress towards the other 2. One of them is tenure. So, I mean, I just can't snap my fingers and make that happen. That's a timeline thing. But I made significant progress for the other 2. So it was really good this week to pull this out and look back and see where I was. And I actually used some of the tools this week to sort of check back in with myself and say, oh, okay, here's where I am now. And, I'm in a better mental space than I was a few months ago, for whatever that was worth. But I did like that pop the library bubble. And I did reconnect with, some public librarian-ness too. So.
And I want to make it clear, right? We're not here just to advertise Pemento. We're not making any money off of this. But what we believe in is the fact that we came together, right? We worked together to build this thing. We have changed it after every cohort. There have been changes made. So Amy mentioned the small groups. We broke people out into small groups using our own sort of like magic sauce behind the scenes, the first couple of cohorts. And we don't do that anymore. It turned out that creating that sort of structure was too much work and was adding too much stress to those of us who run Pemento. So we do that differently now. We have taken a lot of time to receive feedback from the people who are participating in order to make the program better each time around. And as a person who teaches, right, in the law school, and who interacts with patrons and things like that, Pemento has given me a lot of really good space to think about how I need to embrace feedback very, very actively and change things on a dime to make sure that the people around me are getting what they need out of their interactions with me, which in the academic side is hugely important. And I think it's been extra important during COVID when our students are struggling. My students are still struggling, and, and sort of learning to receive this feedback about something that I'm so passionate about has made me, I think, a better librarian and a better teacher. I also want to point out I put up this most recent tweet from Sophie, and we did have permission to share all of these tweets, right, about her decision to leave librarianship and what that looked like as a part of Pemento. All of our resources are available. So if you go to the website, which I put in the chat, you can pull all of the worksheets, you can read through everything, you can do this work on your own. You don't need us to facilitate, anything that's going on. But what we do is we look at things like balance. How balanced is your life in terms of work and home and health and dreams? Almost everybody says that they struggle with dreams, right? I think law librarians tend to have their feet firmly planted on the ground. And, the dream part of that is really challenging. But this idea that we don't have to do this forever. Librarianship is not a calling, it's the job. And I think a lot of people have come out of Pemento and have said, I don't want to do this anymore. And that would be including myself. I will no longer be a librarian in title as of June 30th.
Can I jump in with something on that?
Yeah, please.
It's something that I've observed. And I want to share this because I think that it can't be shouted loudly enough to fellow library administrators and managers. At least 30% of our current cohort, when they were asked to join a breakout room around an affinity and interest, they chose to join one that was about considering leaving the profession. We are in a really tough inflection point across the way. We really need to be thinking about having candid and explicit conversations within our organizations too. Pemento is a wonderful, I love it for the community. Amy, I was almost in tears, that you still it gives me a lot, right? It comes from the spirit of mutual aid. I think it's great that we are building this for one another. But within our organizations and our institutions, we could also be standing to address more of this. I wish that the need we uncovered was a little less, is something that I will observe here in cohort 3, because sometimes I'm listening to some of the most talented, extraordinary people having the most awful experiences and not feeling like they can talk about it at their institutions. And something that Maureen and I talk about is, are you running to something? Or are you running from something? I will observe that it feels as though people leaving the, not all, but some are running from. And we have to take that on, right? We have to think about that as a group.
And I think, go ahead, Marie. Sorry.
I think that's one of the really advantages of taking the time to reflect, because again, you're resolving that values piece, things that you say there's espoused values with whatever identity things you have kind of placed on yourself. Some of our identities I recognize are not things that we opt into, but we have identities, many of them that we wear. And I think you kind of come to this resolution of who is Marini? And is Marini's identity wrapped up in, especially for the people who are willing to take the step away from librarianship, is Marini's identity wrapped up in being a librarian, right? And working in libraries and interrogating that and unpacking some of that. And I think that's a really powerful place to kind of figure out for yourself as an individual, because many of us blindly kind of fall into these identities and these roles without even thinking about it because of the culture that we live in. And so, sorry,
and
Ashley, go ahead.
vocational awe, right, across the profession. Like I see a lot of that play out. And the other thing that I want to call out and acknowledge is part of what makes Pemento work. And I hope you try it out. I hope you try a model, 7 weeks, making time for reflection, bring some folks together, convene. But part of the reason it works is that it is co-creative. What Chase is talking about with the ongoing acceptance and incorporation of feedback, that's participants playing a strong role in defining what this is. And I just think that that's, if we can be agile, and I know that word can be controversial, right? But if we can be responsive in that way, both within and outside of our organizations, I can only think that we will create better environments in which more people thrive and have a healthier relationship to their work, which is also something we think about a lot.
And it's really important, I think, for us to talk about too, that this is about the people, right? It's not about the profession. It's not about some professional organization, which I think is where a lot of our professional development and mentoring fall flat, right? Because we are beholden to the man. For us, it's AALL. For public libraries, it's ALA, and Lord knows there are problems with ALA, just like there are problems with AALL. But I think we saw, even when AALL tried to go through that rebranding, right? And we were all like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this isn't about us. Pemento is about us. And it has always been about us. And it will continue to be about us, whether you do the work yourself that's available, the worksheets that are available on the website, or whether you, look out and potentially do another cohort, or even reach out to people who have participated in the past. Maybe you just want to see what it's all about and you don't want to participate. Like, I get that too. It takes time to do this work, and it takes time to look inward, right? And it's hard. And the community of care that we've established takes a lot of energy, but it gives a lot of energy back when you make something of it. And like I said, this is something that you could use in your own organization with peers. I can say that this has made, I always say, like, don't crap where you eat, right? So I'm not friends with the people that I work with in the library because I don't believe in that. But I am, like, my best friends are on this campus in other departments. And I have taken a lot of what I've learned from this in my relationships with my friends, right? Because we do all work in legal academia and we are all going through a lot of the same stuff, and we're seeing it from different sides. And this has made me a better communicator, because we don't talk about the organization anymore. We talk about ourselves and the stuff that we're dealing with. And that has made all the difference in shifting the way that we think about this stuff. And so I would encourage all of you, if you do have relationships with peers in your organization, right, particularly those in mid-career, but across the board, to really think about the personal side of everything that we're going through, as opposed to focusing on our institutional failings, which are typically many, especially now.
Actually, if I could just weigh in really quickly too, if I can jump back to that around the area of diversity and the value of, I think, what, first of all, by having such a broad definition of mid-career, we get a lot of people in not just types of institutions, not just regional differences, but even hierarchical differences. In this particular cohort, I think it's a little bit more visible than past cohorts. And I think one of the beauties that come out of that is that you can pair does not always necessarily mean that you're in the same hierarchical level. And so for me, it's like, I kind of go through it with each cohort in my own head. I've got my own worksheets going. But it really kind of expands the idea of what is your peer, and just opens up even your ideas to who you connect to. So for example, we're exploring organizational learning plans. And so I had no compunction reaching out to people that I'm not an OD person. I'm not an HR person by profession or by domain expertise, but I had no compunction of reaching out and forming a new peer community to guide us through that process as an organization as we did our environmental scanning. And I think that's one of the strengths of Pemento, is that you expand your definitions and your boundaries, and has been a positive thing for me as a creator/participant.
Thanks, Marini. We have 5 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer. I know that we probably didn't hit our learning outcomes the way I hoped to, but that's too bad. We're just here to talk about the things that we think are important. But if anybody has anything to add, if they have any questions, you put them in the chat. You can ask us here, or we can just be done and let Michelle speak, because her presentation is also timely and wonderful.
And Michelle.
Yay! All of our information is here on the screen. So if you do have any questions, please do reach out to us. Like I said, Amy has participated as a participant without the sort of the like attachment to it that Lindsay Fleming, Marini, and I have. But we do welcome, thoughts, feedback, and hope that you will consider participating, or at the very least, pull the worksheets and think about doing this yourself. Because I do, like I said, I do think that
you do have a question.
Work is extremely important, and share a little bit more about how sessions and conversations are facilitated. So one of the things that we have, thank you for that question, Mallory, is when you sign up for a cohort, you get a 7-week program plan, and it is centered around worksheets that you tackle at various points throughout the 7 weeks. There are also weekly reflection questions that we ask you to think about. And then in the current cohort, we are hosting 4 meetings a week, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday. And participants can come to as many or as few of those weekly meetings as they want, so that they can connect one-on-one with other participants, or 5-on-1, or 10-on-1, or however that works.
It's like a gym membership for your well-being.
Exactly. And then we take those reflection questions and we talk a lot about them in our weekly sessions. My weekly session last week, we talked about how to increase diversity in our libraries, in the hiring, and what we're doing in hiring practices in our libraries that is getting in the way of bringing in a more diverse pool of applicants. And I will tell you that conversation was eye-opening for me. I'm not going to be hiring anybody in the next 2 months, but I'm out of here. But it's nice that I have it in my brain so I can tell other people what I think they should be doing on my way out the door. So it's stuff like that. One day we talked about, there were a group of us who are parents to young kids who have been home during the pandemic. We had a conversation about that, right? Like, we've had a lot of conversations about what it looks like, the servant leadership model and things of that nature. So I think it varies pretty actively. And then Lindsay popped the expectations for participation in the chat as well. And those are sort of our guiding principles.
You've got a lot to, in those facilitated sessions, Mallory, call people in. Right. So I would say one of my biggest roles when I'm facilitating a session is just be like, okay, you've talked enough now. What's your point around this, Amy? Right? Like make sure that because we have folks that are coming to every session all week long. And in some cases, we need to tell them how to listen. And that's good learning for them in all other sort of situations too.
And if you are interested in what it looks like from the participant side too, if you reach out to me, I can potentially give you some names of some participants, Amy, obviously, and then we have some more who I'm sure would be willing to share thoughts on. And I'm sure the thoughts are not all positive, and that's good too, right? But the feedback is essential to moving this thing forward. Okay, 1 minute to spare, Team Pemento. Good job. I didn't think we could do it. So we've presented on this before, and it's taken like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. So thank you all for coming, for listening, for being interested. It is my delight to bring this to law librarians for the first time. And I'm thankful for each and every one of you, despite my general loathing of AALL and everything that it stands for. This group is lovely. So thank you, everybody, and take care of yourselves.
Yeah, also, I would give a round of applause to Ashley Chase, a law library legend. On to new things.
I don't know about that. Some people on this call might be offended by that. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.